Welcome to another Ask Katrina. The question today is, Katrina, how do I influence others as an executive when I don't want people to know key pieces about me? Or, in other words, I have a super high case of imposter syndrome and I don't want people to find out something about me. And so that's actually a question that I put two and two together. There was one question about, I feel like I want to keep certain things private. And there's another component where whether I want to keep it private or not, that doesn't matter. I just feel like I'm not where I need to be. Or when people find out who I really am, they're going to see that I'm not the person for the job. Okay. And so either way, we're going to tackle both of those questions together as one today on this Ask Katrina episode. And so let's dive into this. Where does this come from? Well, we all inherently have pieces within us that we believe aren't great. We believe aren't the best. We look at ourselves in the mirror and we find the flaws. And if you're a high achieving, high performing female leader, which is probably what you are, because that's what I am, and we typically stick together, right? Then we tend to look for the flaws. The reason why you became an executive and you're very good at what you've done in the past is because you could easily identify the gaps and the problems and the issues and you solve them, right? That's what made you successful. It's because you got very used to looking through the world, or looking at the world rather, through that lens. That's the lens that we apply to most everything, right? It's the most commonly used lens that we look through. And so naturally we're going to look at ourselves and we're going to think, I could always be better. I could always do this more, right? And so the imposter syndrome will come from that. Anytime we believe that we're not performing or we're not bringing to the table or we're not showing up as our highest level of self, okay? And again, every promotion that we go through, that will rear its head a little bit. But it rears its head most significantly when we go from mid-level leader to executive, because that growth curve is so big and we have so much of a gap to close that there's a lot of doubt there. And the other promotions, we talk about this regularly, right? And the other promotions that we've had as we've been climbing the ladder that helped us get to the executive ranks, the growth was about this big, right? And so I didn't know a few things. I didn't know 2 or 3 things, but that's manageable. I may have felt a little doubt, I may have felt a little self-conscious, but I can overcome that. That's a lot of growth. That's a lot of fear. That's a lot of time to sit and think about how I'm not as good as I really want to be. And, like I used to say in the mirror a lot when I was an executive, dear Lord, please do not let today be the day that they figure out I am not as good as they think I am, right? And so that was imposter syndrome. But the other component that comes into this is, that I want to not show all of myself. And there are a lot of reasons for that, okay? I say this time and time again. We bring ourselves to work, but we can always decide the pieces that we want to show, right? We've all seen leaders and we've worked with individuals that have shared way too much. They've become friends with everybody. They share everything about their personal lives. And it makes it very, very difficult to have a level of respect and even a level of trust in their judgment because of that oversharing. And so we've seen that happen around us. We definitely don't want to be those individuals. And so we do have a line between personal and professional, okay? And we each get to decide what that line is. But throughout our careers, and depending upon who you are and what you want to bring into work and what you don't, this can be very difficult. Because whether I have imposter syndrome or whether I just don't want to bring all of the components of my personal self to work, I have to have the ability to influence others. As an executive, I get things done through influence, right? It's part of executive presence. And so if I'm going to show up and effectively influence and communicate, I have to build rapport. I have to build rapport and I have to build trust. And the way in which those things are built is that there is a connection, right? I can connect with someone. We find things in common. You're like me. I'm like you, right? I feel like you're human. I'm human. You're human. we can connect on a human level. I trust you. Therefore, I'm going to listen to what you say. I'm going to follow you, or I'm going to agree to the proposal that you put forward, etc. Right? That's a human thing. But when we don't want to bring all of ourselves to work for whatever reason, and let me be abundantly clear, there is zero reason that you need to bring everything to work. You are not obligated to do that. Okay? No one should have full access to your life unless you actively choose to allow that to happen. You are in control of that. Okay? But what am I talking about? Well, I mean, there are various factors, right? Well, what if there's something personal going on at home? What if a family member is sick? I don't want to bring that to work. It's nobody's business. What if I'm going through a divorce? I don't want to bring that to work. That's not anybody's business, right? What if I'm gay? What if, there's some family history that I don't want to share? There's all types of things that we have the full right to not have to share if we so choose not to. Those personal things don't have to show up. But what will happen, whether we have imposter syndrome or we have areas of our life that we just simply do not want to share, is that we tend, because we know them, we know these things because they're within us, right? Those thought forms. We tend to allow those thought forms to put even more space between us and the individuals that we want to build trust with and the individuals that we must influence. What I want you to understand is no one sees that but you. No one knows that there's something personal that you don't want to share but you. No one knows that you have the imposter syndrome and that fear is driving you inside of you but you. Okay, so that's the first thing you've got to realize. You are 100% aware of the situation, but no one else is. So the answer to this and the way in which you can go and influence is you've got to consciously understand, number one, no one sees it. It's okay. And they're not obligated to see it, nor are you obligated to have to share it with them. That's step number one. Number two, decide what you're comfortable sharing, decide what you're willing to share, and go share it. Okay? Talk about things that you're safe talking about. Other things are off limits. You know they're off limits. You just simply avoid answering those questions, or you just simply say, hey, that's just not something I really want to talk about right now. I so appreciate you caring. Thank you, right? Or whatever it is, however you want to answer that. But most people, if you're driving the conversation, you will simply ask questions and engage at the level that you're comfortable engaging, and they will simply follow suit. Okay? So the point and what I see happening a lot is it's the fear. They think everybody else sees it. They see the weaknesses. Doesn't happen. But then number two, there's no rapport building. There's no conversation because they don't want to share. And so then they share nothing. So we've got to find areas and topics and things that we feel comfortable sharing. And we use those areas to drive the conversation, which will build rapport, build the ability to influence, and you'll have the ability to succeed without letting the imposter syndrome, without letting the things that you want to keep private come forward and not make them private anymore. Okay? Find the balance. That's the answer. Find the balance. If you want to chat through it, please send me a DM, send me an email, info@legendleaders.com. I'd love to talk to you about it a little bit more. There is a way to navigate this. There is a way for you to be successful. You can do this. As always, go and be legendary.